Hey there, this is Ben from ExploreInformed with the travel news roundup for the month of July 2019. Today we will talk a lot about Marriott, which I feel like I've done a lot over the last 10 or 20 videos, but they deservingly were in the news a lot this month. We'll also talk about British Airways because they made the same mistake as Marriott, and we'll talk about an update from Boeing on the projected financial impact of their ongoing crisis with the 737 MAX. Welcome to a travel news roundup from ExploreInformed. Let's jump right in. No one likes hotel resort fees, except for hotels, of course. And for the uninitiated, resort fees are mandatory charges that hotels add to your hotel bill in addition to or on top of your nightly room rate and the associated taxes. Hotels claim that the fees cover amenities like Wi-Fi, the hotel gym and the pools, and apparently a computer to print your boarding pass. Because like 7 people still do that. And for some reason, hotels in popular resort markets have decided that the services and amenities like these are not included in the nightly room rate, and we as consumers should be charged extra to cover those costs. Why? Well, I think frankly because they can. And over the last several years, resort fees have increased in both number and cost, with resort fees exceeding $50 per night regularly at resorts here in the US, and with some as high as almost $100 per night. And while more and more hotels have either added or raised resort fees, the public's reaction has become more vocal, and as you can imagine, it has not been positive. I think consumers are generally upset about a number of different things. First, the lack of transparency into resort fees. They understandably see no reason why the services and the amenities covered under the fee are spiked out from the nightly room rate. And lastly, I think folks generally object to a sizable nightly fee that's added to our constantly increasing room rates. Well, if you are a frustrated consumer, kind of like me, a new advocate has joined our team in the fight, and they carry a little bit more weight than you or I. News broke in early July that the District of Columbia is suing Marriott, claiming that Marriott has committed unlawful trade practices, including one called drip pricing, and the result is essentially price deception. And frankly, I can't really argue with that. The lawsuit alleges that Marriott does not include the daily resort fee in the room rate it advertises on its website, does not include the resort fee in room rates advertised by online travel agencies like Expedia and Kayak, and sometimes may print the resort fees on hotel bills or classify them on credit card statements as taxes and fees, which could be misunderstood to be government imposed. Now, I have seen resort fees noted at the top of Marriott.com for quite a while when pricing out various bookings, but I certainly see how this could be misunderstood potentially, as it's not always clear that it's a mandatory supplement or addition to the nightly room rate. And interestingly, the lawsuit also notes that this suit follows an investigation by the attorneys general in 50 states and the District of Columbia. Further, according to Skift.com, 7 years ago, the Federal Trade Commission warned the hotel industry as a whole, saying that the resort fee practices may run counter to consumer protection laws by misrepresenting the real cost of hotel stays. So I don't know what will come of this, and I'm certainly not an attorney, but this is good news, even if nothing comes of this particular complaint. This lawsuit is seeking to force Marriott to cease charging resort fees, and if we don't win this battle, I hope we as consumers still will win the war. And if that wasn't bad enough news for Marriott, Marriott is separately facing a $124 million fine, courtesy of the Information Commissioner's Office, or ICO, in the European Union, who recently announced their intent to levy the massive fine against Marriott. All the way back in 2014, the reservation database for Starwood hotels and resorts was compromised, with millions upon millions of customer reservations exposed, and the US government believes the hackers to potentially be the Chinese. But somehow this hack was not discovered until late 2018, 4 years later, at which point it was then Marriott's problem following their acquisition of Starwood. Marriott initially admitted that up to 500 million, yes, you heard that right, 500 million customer records had been stolen. But even after all the virtual dust settled, it still appeared that over 300 million guest records were in fact compromised. And these weren't just names or emails. Compromised information included date of birth, gender, and importantly, passport numbers. Now, the ICO is assessing this fine as they determined that Marriott did not conduct adequate due diligence during their acquisition of Starwood, and the ICO is given that latitude through the General Data Protection Regulation, commonly referred to as GDPR, which is a data protection and privacy regulation created in 2016 and implemented in the EU in 2018. And maybe you recall receiving a huge rush of emails early last year from all sorts of different businesses that said, hey, we're updating our privacy policy. Well, that was due to the implementation of the GDPR reg. And as you might expect, Marriott has of course issued a statement in response to the ICO's communication and deeply regrets that the incident happened. Now, the ICO has yet to actually issue the fine, but has said they intend to do so. So let's kind of cross our fingers that they do. And for you as a consumer, if you would like more information about the leak and want to find out if your information was compromised, you can visit Marriott's informational site at info.starwoodhotels.com. Again, that's info.starwoodhotels.com. Just like how there was a connection between the first and second story today, that connection being Marriott, there's also a connection between my second and third story. A few days before the ICO announced their plans to fine Marriott the $124 million, the ICO actually first announced that they intend to fine British Airways even more than Marriott. Their proposed penalty is a whopping $230 million, which according to Skift.com represents 1.5% of the airline's revenue in 2017. The genesis of the fine is very similar and is being issued in response to British Airways failing to adequately protect customer data and privacy under the new GDPR regulations. In the case of British Airways, the hack involved customers being diverted from BA's website to a third-party site where customer details were being harvested. The other site did not have adequate measures in place to protect login, payment, and booking details. British Airways CEO Alex Cruz stated that British Airways was surprised and disappointed in the finding from the ICO, which I suppose is what he should say, or rather what he's supposed to if you're a shareholder, but there is no acceptable excuse for failing to protect my payment data and your payment data. Of interest to me, though, is the size of the fine compared to Marriott's. BA is being assessed almost twice as much as Marriott, but BA claims their systems were only compromised between August 21st and September 5th, with around 380,000 booking transactions compromised. And that pales in comparison to the 300 million records exposed by Marriott. We need to consult a cyber expert, of which I am not, but I wonder if the difference is due to the type of data exposed, which appears to include payment data in the case of British Airways. So adding up the British Airways and Marriott's fines, over the course of a week, the ICO levied over $350 million against the two industry giants, which is really a win for you and me. Now, jumping over to aviation, most everyone by now has heard loads about Boeing's 737 MAX disaster, which has included two very, very serious accidents. Lion Air Flight 610 crashed in October of 2018, resulting in the death of 181 passengers and 6 crew. And a short 6 months later, in March 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed 6 minutes after takeoff, taking the lives of 157. Over 300 souls were lost in a span of 6 months, and it all points back to the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, MCAS for short, which was designed by Boeing to help enhance the pitch stability of the airplane while in flight. According to a recent story from the New York Times, Boeing is expecting the financial impact of the crisis to reach almost $8 billion. Back in March, the FAA became the last major aviation authority to ground the aircraft, and airlines continue to push back the date when the plane is expected to return to service, which now potentially may not occur until next year. And Boeing has been forced to actually slow production and stop deliveries of the aircraft. Boeing currently estimates that it will spend over $5 billion to compensate customers who are flying the MAX and expects the production slowdown to cost the airmaker almost $2 billion. And importantly, these figures do not include the cost of any potential litigation that may follow. The crisis is also having a ripple effect across the industry, with carriers laying off flight crews because they have fewer planes to fly, and other airlines are slowing expansion and growth plans. Boeing is still working with the FAA and other regulators to bring the jet back into service, and it feels like we still have a ways to go. For example, with the discovery of new software problems in late June. And longer this problem takes to solve, the more it is going to cost Boeing. But frankly, no financial penalty is comparable to the cost of a human life, and the industry regulators must do what is necessary to ensure the aircraft is safe when it returns to service, no matter what it costs Boeing. So that is it for this news roundup for the month of July 2019. If you have a story to share, feel free to hit us up on social media and maybe we will discuss it in one of our next videos. I have provided links down in the description to the stories we have talked about today. As usual, you can find us on the social medias at ExploreInformed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.